On this, the day of Sam Hain, we're going back to 1999 and running through the woods with the Blair Witch Project. Happy Halloween, everybody, and welcome to Hold Up, the show where we dive deep inside your childhood nightmares, pull the movies from your past out to see if they truly hold up. And today, I am holed up with two spooky individuals themselves, Kyle and Andrew.
Ooh, spooky.
Hello, everybody.
You sound spooky today.
I'm very spooked out, guys.
You look spooky. You're dressed in all black, too.
I am. It's just...
That was choice, wasn't it?
Yeah. I'm really into the goth lifestyle.
Absolutely.
I do think the mood of black is very fitting for today's film. Today, we are tackling the Blair Witch Project.
Ooh, spooky.
It
Talk
is.
about spooky.
But Kyle, one last time, man, tell us your energy level in Halloween candy form.
All right, so when you go and you get that really prime time bag of Skittles or something akin to an M&M.
Prime time, huh?
Prime time.
Yeah.
And you tear open the side and you're just munching on them. You got those peanut M&Ms and you got them rifling through them, putting them in your hand, eating them, and you twirl them back up, you put it in your pocket, and then the day goes by and you've forgotten that they're in there, and you pull them out and they're congealed mass of disappointment and sadness with a little bit of pocket lint and completely inedible for the treat you were looking to munch on the ride home on the train. That's it. That's where we're at today. I hope that somebody can relate.
That was really descriptive.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was on the back of the Blair Witch Project box, too.
It was. That's actually, that's how I felt while I watched it.
Yeah.
You took me places. I went on a journey just then.
So that means you're okay.
I'm doing great, actually, today.
Yeah, really good.
It's a better day.
What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Snickers.
T's.
Ew.
Huh.
Yeah. Go fuck yourself.
Yeah.
No thanks. I don't want to do that.
I know, because you don't like most Halloween candy, Andrew. You won't like because it has chocolate in
Added
it.
sugars.
Fuck off. He likes Starburst. You'll eat Starburst.
Yeah, of course.
Something peanut butter like a Payday.
No.
Why?
Fuck paydays.
What's wrong with you?
That's like an old man candy.
It is not an old man candy.
I will settle that is not an old man candy.
That's
It's
an old
very
man
good.
candy. Fuck you
No,
both.
Yeah.
Werther's Originals. Okay?
Again, old man, old woman candy. No thanks.
That's what I'm saying. Werther's Originals is an old person candy.
Yeah, they both are.
They're not both.
Yeah, they're on the same plane for me.
I think you're getting voted down here, son.
I don't care. This is my world. You're just living in it. What I say goes.
What is your favorite Halloween candy?
Probably something like Smarties or
Smarties?
Sweet Tarts or Starburst or... Yeah, I don't fucking like chocolate, so...
God. Smarties.
That's what you get at the dentist office.
That's exactly...
You get it in your Halloween bag, too.
Here's some powdered talcum and some Tums.
Yeah, what else am I supposed to fucking say then, smartass?
I don't know. Eat something with caramel in it. It's
No,
only
I
caramel.
don't like caramel. I don't like chocolate.
What about Skittles?
Yeah, I love Skittles. Absolutely. That would be up there.
I love Skittles as well.
Sweet
so-
Tarts, Smarties, Skittles, Starburst, something in that vein.
Airheads.
What is
Laffy
Yes,
Taffies.
absolutely.
What is your
Yeah.
least favorite? Like, if I gave it to you now, you would throw up and run out of this room screaming.
Snickers?
Okay, that seems aggressive. I would have said Almond Joy.
He doesn't like chocolate.
Anything with chocolate.
He's just not gonna.
Almond Joy is the worst. Can we?
Yeah, that's fucking disgusting.
No, that doesn't need to be in anybody's palate. And if you have that kind of palate, you're unsophisticated swine.
Do you guys remember when you went trick or treating? Did you ever get like the stupid little toys that were like candy toys? Like it'd be like a maze watch, and you would put the
Yes.
watch on. You would snap your wrist
Yeah.
trying to get the like little marble.
Yes, it was like a little trinket. It was a little trinket they'd give you in your little Halloween box. Like, we don't believe in added sugar because it causes tooth decay and overweight, but
Right.
you can have some
And
of
that's-
this.
And that's where we're getting into this nostalgia part of this show. I think every 90s kid remembers getting that. And they would be like, what the fuck is this? Like, why would I
I remember the maze with a little bead in it, and you're like, what?
Yeah, that would be on the watch. And then, like, you would... And the only way you would get it is you'd have to rotate your wrist in like a non-anatomical way to get the bead all the way through.
But if you did get it through, it was fairly satisfying.
That watch was the death of all children of the 90s. And speaking of death of all children of the 90s, let's talk about the Blair Witch Project.
I love it.
Came out in 1999. Let's start with you, Kyle, because me and you are older than this fetus over here.
Yes, fucking
So,
baby.
what do you remember about the Blair Witch Project? And it's going to be hard because I think you and I were both 8 years old when this came out.
Yeah, so this is a movie that, like, when it first came out, I didn't see it. You didn't see it. It was in theaters, and it was like, you're not like, it's very frightening, and all parents probably saw was, oh my God, there's probably some kind of Antichrist thing in here. This is the worst thing. I remember the first time I watched this movie, I was a child. I was like 16 or 17 years old. And by the way, my definition of a child is anybody below the age of like 21, 23 area. You can't really do much. You don't really know much. You can serve your country and die for it, but like you can't buy a drink. You're in school usually. Most kids are kids until they're out of college. So I classify anything under that as a child. I was definitely a child when I saw this, like 16 years old, like maybe 16 years old, about to get my driver's license, like very young. And I remember this is right when we like gotten a new computer because my mother worked from home. She was a healthcare communications specialist, and she had her own like laptop area, her own computer area. For whatever reason, we put the iTunes on her computer, so we couldn't watch on the fun computer. So me and my friend had to like, I remember I got like an iTunes gift certificate for my birthday because that's when iTunes was getting popular. Like 2006 is when I watched this. I put that in there. And I was scrolling through, and I was like, oh, the Blair Witch Project. Because me and my friend Alex Cruz, shout out. What's up?
Alex, hope you're listening.
He is.
He's for sure listening.
He is listening. Yeah, he'll listen. He'll listen. You choo-choo. So
here's looking to you, Alex.
So we had already watched Amityville Horror. We thought that was pretty scary. And that was the old one. And my friend Adam, we had watched that with as well. And we'd been kind of watching scary movies like The Ring and stuff like that. We were kind of working our way up. So this is like the next level. And we put that on my mom's.
I've got to ask.
Yes.
The Ring, did you watch the Japanese one or were you watching
No, we watched
the
the American version.
So.
Yes. No, this wasn't.
The Japanese one takes it to the next level.
That
may be one of the scariest movies I've ever seen in my entire life.
I will say the American version was plenty scary enough. I remember we had decided that we wanted to watch a scary movie, but we couldn't watch it on our TV in the basement because there was no copy of it, and I had the copy downloaded to iTunes. So we decided to go into my mom's work office on two rolly chairs and sit down and watch an hour and a half long movie in the dark. We closed the closet, and we sat there, and we were absolutely riveted. And like, the first little bit of it is boring if you're like, younger. You're just kind of like, well, what's going on right now? They're just goofing around, horsing around kind of thing. But it gets real pretty quick. And there's one scene in particular in this movie where it's just like, you're like, oh, okay, this is really not fun. This is very uncomfortable now. Yeah. And it goes downhill from there. And I remember when we were done watching this movie, turn on the lights, and we both just looked like gaunt. Our eyes are sunken in. Like we were like, what the fuck did we watch? As soon as we were done watching this, Alex was like, we need to look this up. Like, we need to look this up. So we got on the internet and we looked it up, and we found a page that was like, this is all real. Everything that happened was real. They don't know. And when you're that young and impressionable and you're not into film very much, like, yes, this is real. If you look at this now, anybody who has an amateur eye for film will tell that like this is obviously not real because it's edited very well. There's clearly a shot list of what's going on, but for most of the population back in the 90s, not really that popular into filmmaking. It's in general, it passed, and it really fucked people's shit up.
I would say I didn't know when we were going to talk about this, but I say we just go ahead and dive in now since you brought it up. This movie started the viral marketing campaign we know today. It's pretty impressive.
Incredibly.
Because they created a website, and this is back when the internet was a fairly new thing. A lot of people didn't have access to the internet. I know our family didn't, and if you did, it was dial-up, and it was like 40 minutes to log on, and then your dad would pick up the phone to call in a pizza and log you back off, and then you had to spend all night getting
fucking
back on.
Earthlink.
Yeah, Earthlink net zero. I remember the website was just the missing persons poster,
Yep.
and then they marketed this around the world as a real story. And they didn't have to do much. It was just all missing persons report. These events are true. Find out what happened to the hikers that went missing in the Blair Witch, which is not a real thing. The Blair Witch is a made-up story by the producers themselves.
It does Venn diagram over into like the Salem witch trials and stuff like that.
And the Bell Witch.
Yes.
I think it is modeled after the Bell Witch in Tennessee, which was the first reported paranormal homicide out there. I'm not too familiar with the story. I used to know more, and I dumped that in my memory bank, but I forgot the guy's name, but he was tormented by an entity and eventually had a heart attack, and his family, and even, I think it even went down in the obituary as he was killed by the Blair Witch. No one had done a marketing campaign quite like this before.
They say it was the first movie to use the internet to market itself.
1999, that's a new thing. And it created websites. I think they even sent out, instead of the movie poster was missing persons reports sent out. So they garnered a lot of success through people not knowing. And you thought going into the theater, and this is a naive mind, because there's so much legal red tape that would go through showing like people dying on film, but you never know. And so people thought that they were watching, like, this is from the FBI's desk. They released the film of what happened to these kids. And that's what scared a lot of people more than anything. And I do want to correct something. I hear people say this all the time, that it's the first found footage film. It is not. And it's not even the first found footage horror film either. So Cannibal Holocaust in the 70s is the first found footage horror film. And this movie actually takes a lot of liberties from that. There was also an Orson Welles movie from the 60s that was filmed, that was found footage and considered well ahead of its time. It didn't even release until the late 70s. There's several films before this. This was not the first found footage film. And even I think The Last Signal came out in a couple years before this. That was found footage. This movie didn't revolutionize the found footage part of it as much as it revolutionized taking a fictional story and pushing it into the fourth dimension. They did that very well, and that created the success of this movie, I believe. If this movie was released, same movie released now, you don't have the success, because like we can Google it, we can tweet about it, we understand it is fictional, and you have to put it on that lens of like when you go in the 90s watching this, like, am I watching something real? And that's what a lot of people thought for a very long time.
I mean, to be fair, though, it still does feel real when you were watching it, just by how it was shot and how it was made. Obviously, you know it's not, but you're transported there with
Exactly. This film has a lot of interesting nuggets with the production.
So many layers.
So many layers. But they filmed it where these kids just took the cameras and filmed it themselves and improv'd all the dialogue.
All of it was improvised.
They had GPS signals
that they would... GPS signals that they had to use to find little milk cartons that had Easter eggs or prompts within them.
Yeah.
It'd be like, this is what you got to do, this is where you got to go, act it out, we'll see you tomorrow. And they would film themselves over a course of hours, acting out these scenes or these prompts that were laid out by them, by the producers and directors.
It wasn't necessarily improvised. They gave them a skeleton script with points that they needed to hit, and then they improvised the dialogue.
80 hours of dialogue was improvised.
That's incredibly impressive.
The script itself was 35 pages.
Yes.
Nice.
The milk crates, too, and I read where Donahue, the main girl in the film, Heather, she said that when they were going and you got to the crates and you found it, they would tell you what your next move is, how you're supposed to feel and act, but you're not supposed to reveal that to the other actors. So they were really playing off of each other. And the two that got into the arguments the most, Heather and Mike, they were supposed to be at wits end the whole time, but it was actually Heather and the other guy,
Josh,
that had a lot of falling out. They did have a secret code. It was taco. They would say taco to each other if they needed to break character and start over. 190 minutes was I think the original cut,
and it took them 8 months to edit all of that down.
So crazy.
I cannot imagine how hard it would be to take that footage and edit that out of it. I mean, they have some incredible performances acting wise. Like, this is, I'm going to say this now, knowing I'm going to get so much shit for this, but this is personally, I think there's an argument to be made that this is one of the best acted horror movies, because the visuals are very limited. You only see really two things.
It's a one location shoot.
Yeah, one location shoot. You only see two instances or two scenes that you actually have a visual of something that's skin crawling.
And they did that on purpose. They did that. The director did that on purpose. He took it from Jaws. Obviously, you see Jaws, but not until towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
And the whole idea of not knowing what this entity is or what you're dealing with creates that suspense and that stress. And they played on that through the entire fucking movie, essentially.
Yeah.
And I do think that like this, it would not be good if it was not well acted. There's no point in that where I'm like, I don't believe them. I believe everything. Very much, and that's hard to do.
And it doesn't have to be Shakespearean text either.
No.
It was so real, and you believed every second.
And just there were certain things that were just very like you can tell that they were in it. They were in that shit, and they were tired, and they were cold, and they were hungry
because it was almost a form of method acting at that point.
It
literally was.
It's funny you mentioned that too, because I did read a fact today that was very interesting. They actually limited their food day
supply.
by day.
Yeah.
So they did create that environment for them.
Which again,
acting.
Again, and here's the thing, folks, take it from two people that went to, school of two act. Yeah, no,
for sure, bro. Carnegie Mellon.
Carnegie Mellon. Like that makes your job a lot easier as an actor when you have that stuff provided for you. They took advantage of something that didn't exist at that point, and they really wrapped everybody around their finger with that. And I think that nowadays, what could you do that with? Like what would you? I mean, like I feel like there's a way to do it.
I think my brother spoke to it because he was a teenager when it came out, so he got bought into the hype. And I remember him and my cousin talking at length about, I don't know if this is real or not, and that's how I knew about Blair Witch Project. Obviously, we weren't going to go see it. My parents weren't going to let us go see it. But I was following through my brother's footsteps, and I could hear the curiosity, and I was thinking to myself, too, as a child, I mean, I was 8 years old, I had enough grasp on the real world to understand that we may be watching a murder. I remember my brother found out through a kid at school that had the internet, like, at his disposal, found some debunking websites eventually.
So I never got caught in that craze or frenzy of like.
Yeah, I meant to say, Andrew, tell us about your nostalgia.
I was in the 4th grade when I first watched this.
Jesus Christ,
10
Andrew.
years old.
Jesus Christ.
My buddy.
So you saw this in what, 2003?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, Andrew.
My buddy was a big cinephile, loved movies. He watched a lot of more mature things than me at that age.
Cinephile at 10.
I mean, he literally was obsessed with movies.
I believe you. It's just a funny image. I have him in a smoking jacket, drinking a glass of wine.
Watching One Who Flew Over Cuckoo's Nest.
He had watched The Ring. He had watched like some of the first Saws. Like his parents didn't care. But he came over one night.
I would say so.
Great dude. I haven't talked to him in years, but love that guy.
Is he in prison?
No, I think he lives in D.C. I hope he's doing well. If you're listening, Evan, what's up? He was like, let's watch a scary movie. Because I think we watched it in October. And I was like, okay,
you
cool.
got to.
And we went to Blockbuster or like Family Video, and we rented the Blair Witch Project one Friday night or Saturday night.
Should we pour one out for Family Video?
Yeah, man.
You never hear very many people that are like.
They're still around though.
They are.
They're still.
Are
around.
they still operating?
They're
They're still in Jasper, Indiana, baby.
Oh,
Jasper, Indiana.
But yeah, he was like, let's watch the Blair Witch Project. Because I think the thought was like, I don't want to watch something super scary. And he was like, I think this one will be okay. Because I don't think he had seen it yet. And we went up to my room. It was starting to get dark at that point. My room was darker than most of the house because I had big old shades, blackout curtains, if you will. So it was the mood was already dark and creepy. We put it in, we watched it, and I just remember being terrified. We finished it, and as soon as we were done, we ran into my parents' room because I think we finished it like after midnight.
Did your parents get mad at you?
No. They didn't care. So I ran into the room and like
my mom would have been pissed.
No, because my parents go to bed late as it is. So like they had just gone to bed like 30 minutes ago or something like that. You know,
I mean, my mom would have been pissed that I watched it and got scared. Now she's got to deal with the aftermath.
That's exactly.
Well, I did hear about that the next day, but my mom is so sweet and kind. She was like, "Why did you have to watch something that dark, Andrew? why did you?"
What's your mom's name?
Grace.
Grace. Shout out to you, Miss Grace. You sound like a wonderful parent.
Grace. She is a great person.
But we were so terrified that I don't even think we got ready for bed. We just went to my parents had a bunk bed in the room. We just slept in the bunk bed. I related it to it so much more because I was in Boy Scouts. I had been camping. I had been in the outdoors a number of times. And if you've ever had any sort of situation out in the wilderness, in the desolate rural area, like this movie hits home even harder.
I got to watch a lot of shit I shouldn't be watching through my brother.
Hell yeah.
I remember being so curious by it, but I was a scared child too. So I really didn't want to watch it. I was just scared thinking about it. And then when I was like 17, 18, I was like, oh yeah, Blair Witch, I'm going to watch it. And I'll go ahead and mirror my experience there. It was not good. I literally watched it and was unfazed by it. This is pre me falling in love with movies and like studying film and all this stuff.
Can you see my face right now? I'm shocked. I'm surprised.
I was too at the time. You know, sometimes it's all about headspace too. Didn't even blink an eye at it, and I was like, okay, that was awful, and moved on. And I'm just telling you that to give you, that was my first experience. We'll talk about at the end of the episode my second experience. Well, moving on here. Andrew, since it's fresh on your brain, you've watched it how many times in your lifetime? 3 or 4 times?
I think this is my 4th or 5th time now.
Yeah, now it's your chance to give these audience members their juicy numbers for the week.
Okay, so
their Halloween plump numbers.
The budget that's listed here on Box Office.
Do we
Mojo,
need to guess?
Yeah, you can guess. It's incorrect, though. I'm going to say that right now. But
The
guess.
budget's incorrect?
Yes, it is.
The budget on there that you're about to read is incorrect?
Yes, it is.
Then why are we going to...
Because this is the original budget. They had to go back and do things to make edits and do things. But
So, original budget first. Kyle, what do you think this movie was budgeted at?
Oh. There were 2 cameras.
3 cameras, I think.
Were there?
I think there were 3, yeah.
I think they only shot on 2, though, didn't they?
Yeah, but they returned one of them to Circuit City.
Oh, that's
I'm,
right.
not, I'm not even fucking with you. That was a fact I read, that they returned one of the cameras and sold the other one.
Interesting.
So this budget is a lie.
So we're talking about total budget, not pre-production, not production, all of it.
This was before...
I'm going to say it's definitely under $1 million. I'm going to say high end, not including marketing. High end, I'm going to say 100,000.
Chase?
I feel like it's going to have a bigger budget than that, but it shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
For what?
Honestly,
for some reason,
My first guess would be 5,000 honestly.
it feels like it should be
But
5,000. I'm going to say
with editing and shit.
250,000.
Good guess.
So the original budget, and they originally put up 35,000 for it, and then they had to move closer to 60,000. That was the original budget. But then after final cost, after post-production edits and stuff like that, it was started out at 200,000, and then it made its way all the way to 750,000.
Damn.
No way.
Swear
That's
to
crazy.
God, that was probably after.
Or I could make that movie for $1,000. Anyone investors listening out there, let's go.
That was
Let's
probably
do it.
before Artisan. That was probably right around when Artisan Entertainment bought it, and they went back and changed some things because the ending, it was always the same, but they went back and changed some things after it was purchased.
They did. I also noticed today that the credits rolled. The credits did not roll in the original.
No, they did
and
not.
that's changed since I watched this on iTunes. I've had this on my iTunes for forever, and I watched it today on the same iTunes account.
You can thank Lionsgate for that because
That's
they got
good.
fucking sued, and they should be sued. But we'll get into that later. But the original budget of just the 2 dudes from, what was the name of the film company?
Haxon.
Haxon. It was around 60,000. But then post-production credits, and then when they sold it to Artist Entertainment, skyrocketed all the way up to 750,000.
Interesting. This one I'm stumped on is guessing what it made domestically, because I'm sure that they raked it in.
Yeah, you're right. Domestically, they raked in about 140 million.
Damn.
And then add on another 108 internationally, it's almost 250 million altogether.
On less than $1 million budget.
On less than $1 million budget. That is fucking insane.
Well, and
Great return on investment there. They think this is the highest grossing indie film of all time.
let's this is going to be quick. This is going to be the quickest blow by blow.
We're not going to talk much about
Yeah,
it.
There's a lot
so-
going on. There's like 4 scenes to talk about.
All right, Andrew, let's get started. Lead the way, and we're going to talk about the Blair Witch Project. What happens first in this film?
It's not the most memorable at the beginning. They set up the idea that they're doing a documentary, right?
So, yeah, and I wanted to say this because you both talk about it's kind of boring at the beginning. The beginning I loved because I loved them trying to establish this fake folklore in this town. It's mainly this Heather girl. She's leading the way on this, leading the charge, and she's got two other guys with them, and they're making a documentary about the Blair Witch.
For their film class.
For their film
whatever
class,
college,
yeah.
Whatever community college they go to. Or,
yeah. And they're just like, we're just going to, and they think it's going to be a fun time. They're just going to be
It's for a class.
camping and staying in a hotel, and it's going to be a quick shoot, and then they can get their A. I think they were in film school. But so they go to the small town where the Blair Witch is, and they're interviewing the townsfolk. And this was the realest part of it to me, because the people that they're interviewing,
some of them were actual citizens. Some of them were paid actors, but they weren't told that.
Right.
But some of them were just random dudes off the street.
Right. The actors did not know that these people were paid actors. They actually thought they were interviewing townsfolk that had a couple cue cards. It gives this real, just bare bones, snuff almost style of documentary. Like something we would shoot if we just go out on the street now and interview people about random stuff. There's one scene, and I remember it vividly, and I remembered it the last time too. Is a middle-aged mom, and she's like holding her baby, and the baby keeps like
covering her mouth,
covering her mouth as she's trying to tell a creepy story, and the mom goes with it, and it's actually very creepy, and it's very unsettling.
That really that's the selling point in that whole beginning scene with all of that, like the main selling point in that first scene that gives us exposition. That's like, okay, they're not fucking around with this. Like, I don't go up there. I'm not going up there. Like, I know about it. I know enough to not go up there.
Or opposite sides, like, do you believe in this? And they're like, no. Are you a God-fearing man? Yeah, damn right I am.
Yeah,
All right.
and that's what I loved about this opening scene is, and this is like 20 minutes of this is just them interviewing different people and traveling around. A lot of this movie in the opening scenes, and a lot of the movie in general, is just B-roll. The shots itself is not what you focus on. It's the dialogue and the character interactions. So during the first 20 minutes of this movie, it is scenes of them driving, scenes of them in a hotel room taking shots, and you see the camaraderie there. And you also see the way they interact with each other, the film crew. It's like they're not really friends. They're just kind of doing this together because they're nervous with each other, but they're also, you know, like, oh, we've got a greater good, like, and then they're taking shots of whiskey, and then they're out interviewing other people, and some of the people are just like, yeah, I mean, there's stuff in the woods, I guess, and they're getting like these people that I feel like I knew growing up. Instead of in like a lot of horror films, I feel like fuck it up because it gets these people like, don't you dare go on that hill. Don't you do it. And the guy's got like 5 eyes, and he's got a toddler hanging off his like thigh. How they depict country people in rural areas, they depict them as just inbred imbeciles.
Stereotypical bullshit.
Yeah, that are super God-fearing. Some of them are like, yeah, it's just a story. And it set the tone for this could be real because these are people I interact with every day. I love this opening 20 minutes.
So they talked to a number of people, obviously mixed reviews, mixed things. They talked to one guy who discusses someone named Rustin Parr, who was a man who lived up in the mountains in a cabin by himself. And apparently he had lured 7 children into his lair and killed them all.
Yeah, into his house,
Into his house, yes.
And
I think the idea was that he was entranced by the Blair Witch or whatever, possessed, if you will. But he would put one in a corner, and it would face away while he would kill 2, like next.
No, he would have one not in the corner, the other one looking in the corner because he couldn't have the eyes watching him while he did it. So they would have, and also, did you notice the number of children?
7.
Which is, Andrew?
7.
Yeah, it's a number, but what kind of number is it?
It's the divine number.
It's the divine number.
Yes.
It's the holy number.
Yeah.
So it's an affront to God. Looking at that now that I'm older and we know about a lot of this other stuff that, like, especially with religion and certain signs, 7 would be an affront to God. Like in The Conjuring when they knock 3 times. Well, that's the Father, Son, Holy Ghost. That, to me, now watching it again was another layer that I was like, I like that. That sells it a little bit more for me because that makes it more realistic.
And another layer that's not as obvious as the number 7, but Rustin Parr was a near anagram for Rasputin. That was
I didn't catch that.
That was the creator's brainchild, if you will. They talked to other people as well. There was another story about a woman who was banished named Ellie Kedward. And she
What a name.
She was supposed to be like the Blair Witch, who was banished out of Blair Township in 1785 for witchcraft. And that was another near anagram for someone named Edward Kelly, who was like a 16th century mystic, some like weird dude who dabbled in the occult and did some crazy weird shit back when Roman Catholicism was at its peak.
And this is where it goes back to where they're building a story, but they're tying it into true facts or other folklore, and it makes it feel real.
Yes. And then I think the realest part was when they spoke to that old woman who lived in the trailer.
Oh, what was her name?
Oh, what was her name?
Mary something, right?
Mary something. And she was weird. Like,
she was that was the one thing that did scare me because I was like, she looks like a witch.
She was someone that you knew of, but avoided at all costs in your hometown. I think her description of what she experienced in her interview that they got with her, I think we should talk about that. So do you remember what she said,
She
Kyle?
said that she was approached in the woods by somebody who looked like their feet was levitating. It didn't look like they were walking, and she had black fur, black hair,
like a horse
on her arms, and then what did she do next? And then she opened up her robe, and it was the body of a female, but it was all black fur, black hair, like a horse hair.
And I remember hearing that when I was 10 years old and like being really freaked out. I was like, okay, so
That's
this is
really
real.
scary.
This is real. This is believable. This is scary as shit.
Scary shit because that chick is like, all the other stuff that she's got, like this notebook and she's rocking and stuff, but she's telling it with clarity. And then right after that scene's done, they start talking about like, and she's also like,
a professional ballerina.
Yeah, and she's also like working with the Department of Energy on some new fuel source, like batshit crazy kind of stuff. But that doesn't sound batshit crazy.
No.
But to them it does because of the context that they have, and this isn't real to them. This is just an urban legend, and that starts selling it even more. That this is something they probably shouldn't fuck around with. It doesn't sound like
Here we go.
Think about all the folklore tales you've heard in rural parts of the country. We had folklore legends like that, but they didn't hammer anything specific over your head. It's just like everyone had their own story and they were all different.
Yeah.
And they didn't necessarily tie together other than shit's going down in these woods. So that also makes it real, because if this movie was made today, those interviews, everyone would be telling the same story in the same fashion. You had that boy, he murdered his family, and then it was like, you're talking about the old Johnson kid.
Yeah, I'm moved into that old house.
Yeah,
and they killed all those people in.
Yeah, and he used that axe. And
the axe that's on the wall.
Yeah, and
Here
he's
we
like,
go.
in the axe, and then it'll cut, and it'll be like, the axe on the wall was missing that night. And it's like, okay, all right, you all have the same story to tell, and it makes it feel more written. This made it feel like the environment was alive. Yeah. Like the woods itself was there, the folklore's there. There's something about a found footage film that they miss on 9 times out of 10. And it's just making it feel like it's found footage. Like anybody can go grab a camera and just start shaking it around repeatedly and that's kind of where found footage goes. It's like, oh, I'm making a documentary, and they shake the camera, but they don't know how to make it feel like an actual documentary. And this one, for its age and being early on found footage, because, I mean, even though it wasn't the first, it was still, that wasn't a filming process they did very often.
No.
This first 30 minutes does just such a great job, and I bet I could cut that and show it to people that haven't seen it, and they would think it's just a backwoods documentary that some kids made. They would not know the difference. If you go into this movie believing it's real, this first half has you convinced. That's where it had me the most. I will say that. The first 30 minutes of this movie had me the most.
I do agree with you, Jace, that the first 30 minutes like feels like a real documentary.
Yeah.
Like the mock, you can throw the mock out, and
It's just a documentary.
they want it to be as real and minimalistic as
I mean,
possible.
it felt more real than anything I've ever seen on Ghost Adventures with that piece of shit.
Oh no, that's real. It's all real, Chase.
I felt something.
The
Come at
infrared
me, you
laser
piece of
is going
shit,
to show the
ghost.
footprints.
Come at me. I'll beat you up. He literally said that once.
One day when we start tackling episodes on this podcast, for everyone out there that's listening, upvote this or comment and do whatever. Send us some mail or a carrier pigeon. If you want us to do this,
or an owl.
this episode of Ghost Adventures where he tries to fuck a ghost, we'll review that. But
That sounds like fun.
moving on, Kyle, they get to the woods.
They start camping.
They start their camping, and a lot of this hinges around Heather having control of the map, and she knows where she's going, and they have a compass and they have a map.
And she's very confident. So
She's very confident.
You
Absolutely.
believe her that she knows.
No, we're going to a graveyard. It's up here. It's a day's hike. We brought some day packs. We're going hiking. Nothing's really happening at first. The first day's going by, and they're still goofing around and stuff. They meet two other guys. This is like when they're on their way there, and they do another interview with these two men.
Oh, the two fishermen.
Yes, two fishermen, and that talk about believable. That was believable.
The one who was like, I don't believe any of this shit, but the other guy who was like, you're full of shit, man. Like, this is as real as it gets.
Yeah,
So
get your
one-
head out of your fucking ass.
The one guy was like, "Oh, not this shit again," and he just and they keep trying to fish, and you can tell they're annoyed by
Yes.
these kids.
I thought that was fucking awesome.
And the guy was like, you don't know what you're dealing with, man. You don't understand. This is real.
He's like, I saw something.
Yeah.
And he's like, I bet you're probably drinking that day too. You can tell these are like two friends. This is Andrew and I when we're doing something outdoors and we're fed up with each other. That's how it sounds. It's real as fuck.
Yeah.
And like you believe everything. Like these are two friends who have been doing this for forever. Then they get to the actual spot where they go over a crucial part of the story.
Coffin Rock.
Coffin Rock.
There were about 5 men. It was back in the 1800s. They were ritualistically murdered on this rock and like laid out in pentagram form or something.
Yes. Their hands were tied to the
Yeah,
other's
yeah.
ankles or feet and formed a solid structure, which that doesn't really tell you much. But like Andrew said,
Probably a
5
pentagram.
could be probably a pentagram.
Some sort of star or
something
whatever.
fucked up, and they had been disemboweled. And what else happened to
I
them?
think their teeth, their like tongue had been taken out.
Yeah, and they had,
that.
Yeah, their teeth.
indecipherable writing on their bodies.
Because the
Yes.
teeth will come into play.
Someone reported that they found these bodies on this rock, and it's the 1800s. You can't drive a car. You got to go back into town and tell the local sheriff or whatever. That's going to take some hours, maybe a day. They go in, they come back, and the bodies are all gone. There's not even a sign that there was
No blood.
no blood, nothing. Bodies had been physically moved by some force, and this man is telling the story. He was like, over there by that rock, there was one time I was fishing, and I just saw this thick mist just arise over this rock. And I could see it clear as day, and it started getting towards me, and then it just evaporated as someone walked up behind me to check on me or something like that.
Yeah.
And I turned back to look at it, and it was completely gone. And this is the same guy that was adamant about this being real. And that kind of sets the tone, again, for what they are about to run into.
Yeah.
They go to that graveyard.
Yeah.
And they find, 7 rock cairns there.
Yeah.
7.
Yeah, 7.
And then she knocks one over.
Josh knocks one over.
Yes, which is crucial.
Very crucial. And they were like, did you just knock that over? And he was like, yeah, who cares? They're like, no. Put it back together. So they rebuild that rock cairn, and they go about their business. And that's when they camp that first night, and they wake up and they hear like
Rustling.
and sticks like snapping. It sounds like someone is walking around their tent, and they hear things being thrown, and it's a pretty eerie feeling for me personally, because I'm not going to get into specific details, but I've heard things like that while you're out camping.
Yeah.
It makes you feel that you're not alone in the vast wilderness, and that is a very frightening feeling.
There's not a lot of movies that capture both the terrifying aspect of being alone even with you when you're with 2 other people. If you're cut off from civilization, you're alone.
You're alone.
And there's nothing that can save you immediately.
No.
And then also doubling on top of that, the fear of like what's out there, and there is something that's intangibly like tangible throwing things and interacting with you, and it wants whatever that is, and it's not your head playing tricks on you because you're with 2 other people, and that can't be what it is. that is what this movie does so well for me.
Yeah.
And like it does, I don't know of anything else that's come about since then that really kind of tackles that openness and that agoraphobic, like you're in your tent, you don't want to step outside your tent because out in the tent it's just trees that are taller than your wildest imagination,
and it's pitch black,
pitch black.
And you can't see anything, and you don't have any idea what's 20 feet in front of you.
No.
That is a sinking feeling
Yes.
that's really hard to capture. And
Just the claustrophobicness of being in an open place like that, like the juxtaposition of opening up your tent and then just feeling like you are surrounded by emptiness.
Just camping alone and hearing the emptiness or hearing the rustling, because there's always something out there and you can't see it. It used to scare the shit out of me when I was camping. I don't camp as much anymore, but I used to camp all the time. And hearing all those noises in the southeast too, like there's basically the insects are screaming at night in pain.
a lot of forests, a lot of national forests and wooded areas that
People die all the time, and it doesn't have to be paranormal.
it's those woods, those types of woods, they're very unforgiving environments.
Exactly, and you can get lost really easy. So
Easily, yes.
So once they start getting lost in these woods, because they start kind of circling.
They wake up the next day and they try to make it back to their car. They can't find it again. This is where they're like, shit, what are we doing? So let's just let it, at this point, it's like a Sunday and they're like, shit.
We got to go back to work on Monday.
Get back to work the next day. Let's make camp. We'll get up. We'll find our car. We're much closer. So they wake up that next morning, and what do they find outside?
This is when they find the three
cairns. There are three stone cairns outside their tent. You don't necessarily know if that means anything, but there are three of them, and there are three.
Well, you know, you don't necessarily need to know if it means anything because they weren't there when we went to bed, and unless one of them's making them and putting them out there, which could very well be a thing. But aren't they all? Are they all in the same tent or one?
Yeah, they're all in one tent.
Yeah, so that would be pretty hard to do without waking everybody up, especially when you're that close. There's somebody out there with them. Was my first guess. Was like there is somebody who is doing this to them, and that's just as scary as anything else, because their first thought is, somebody's fucking with us out here.
Locals got to be out here, some rednecks or something.
Yeah.
And they don't want to fuck around with that either because, I mean, scary man in the woods.
Yeah.
You know, that's a whole other can of worms. So they get surprised by that. Do they take them or do they just leave them?
They leave them.
They leave them. Yeah.
They quickly packed up camp.
It's a little creepy.
They got out and they're like, we got to find the car. And at that point, that's when Heather's like, shit, I don't know where the map is. They're wandering around, kind of aimlessly but frantically, like they need to get back to their car. We're pushing the time limit here. And then this is when they stumble upon the things hanging in the trees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right. Yes.
And they had teeth in them, right? Or
they had. I don't know if they had
I don't
teeth.
think
It was
you saw
hard.
it.
It was hard to see, but they had stuff.
So
in
the
them.
white things in that was teeth, and they used
I didn't even realize that.
They
but
used real teeth.
from a Maryland dentist. And
Yeah.
to let our audience know, if you haven't seen it, you have seen it, but they're stick figures. They're like voodoo stick figures that are hanging from the tree. Some are large, some are small.
This is the main thing that's come out of this movie. People have seen this kind of arrangement of sticks.
Yes.
They're looking this witchcraft like symbol. You've seen it. It's all over the poster. If you Google the Blair Witch Project right now, you will see this stick configuration, and then these just happen to have teeth in them.
This is when things really start to get unsettling for me as the viewer. It's just, I don't know, the lighting is perfect. Like the sun's starting to go down. You are so lost. You're in the middle of fucking nowhere. And what do you run into?
And let's keep in mind, this actually happens in October. They're filming this in October, and they're saying that this has happened in October. They finished filming it on Halloween night. Yeah.
Wow.
I was gonna wait.
So this is the
throw that in
perfect
there, but they
podcast
literally
for this.
finished filming that final scene on Halloween night, and that's just that's
so
so perfect.
Late October in Maryland. It is cold. It is everything's dead. There's no more leaves.
I don't know if it's
point.
cold, but it's crisp. It's
definitely
definitely fall
chilly.
weather. It could probably get down to the 40s and 30s.
They're definitely
at night.
mentioning, they're definitely mentioning at night while they're camping how cold it is getting. I mean, early November in Maryland, I'd imagine is.
It's
about
the
the
same
same
as
as us.
Kentucky and Cincinnati. It's
Yeah.
like that's going to be like on a good year, like 50s, 40s. On a bad year, you might get some snow, maybe a little bit. But like, you're not going below 30 degrees.
I would say on average, it's going to be 40s.
38 to 50.
They weren't the most prepared campers or hikers because they only thought they were out for a night.
They didn't have any food.
They were ragtag
and
idiots.
They were wearing jeans.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they see these sticks, and then again they can't find the fucking car. They're freaking out because like it's like Monday or whatever, and like they're already going to be late for work. People are going to think that they're missing, and they camp again that night because what else are they supposed to do?
Yeah, you can't really just call an Uber at that point.
No, you can't. The past few nights they've been in their tent. They've been hearing things in the woods. They've been hearing sticks snapping and people walking and stones being thrown.
And it's getting progressively worse.
It ramps up this night. After they see those sticks, I don't know if that triggered something, but the next thing that happens to them is they hear children laughing.
Yeah.
And people are talking and people start beating on their tent.
Hitting the tent.
Like aggressively.
Which fun fact about that, too, is that was unscripted. They did not know that was coming. The producers had snuck into the campsite
that tracks.
while they were filming and started shaking the tent. And so you're getting a visceral reaction from them.
A real reaction.
A real reaction. So, yeah, tent starts shaking violently. They run.
They run out in the woods. They
with
just
nothing.
Start running.
Like Heather's trying to put her shoes on, for God's sakes, while they're running.
And you remember her saying something. She goes, "Oh my God, what is that?" Do you remember that line?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You don't see what it is, but someone on the production team had worn white stockings, like white long johns, like a white long sleeve shirt, and then it put like white like hose or like pants, like see-through pants over his head. So she saw something in the dark that looked probably pretty
needed
creepy.
to be real. Yeah. In order to get a list of response.
It was supposed to be a prank, too. I read that one. So they were trying to prank her, and she just kind of like let it roll.
Yeah.
And they kept it in.
She acted well. But they
always deny.
They run off into the woods. They finally like run into each other. I think they're running with each other, but I think probably one goes off like 20 feet that way, the other 30 feet the other.
Then they get separated.
But they come back and they reconvene, and they don't go back to sleep. They just huddle up, sit on a log, and wait till the sun comes up because they are fucking frightened.
And at this point, they're at wit's end with each other. They're blaming each other for everything.
Because at this point, it's almost like Tuesday or whatever.
Yeah. They're like, you don't have...
It's your fault.
Where's the map? Like, you lost the map.
And then what happens with that map, Chase? Because it's daytime now, and now they are missing a day of work. People are freaking out probably back home. Where's the map? What happens?
Mikey throws the map away.
Threw it in
I remember that Mac. I threw it in the fucking river, and he's just having a manic episode, which is also terrifying as well. To have one of your three is mentally unstable in the wilderness, fucking
not
terrifying.
good.
Nope.
Terrifying.
But to be fair, I don't think she knew what that map was doing. I don't think it helped her with her point of reference whatsoever.
They kept going in circles, and they at one point they were hiking all day and ended up in the same camping spot, which actually happened. They actually did that filming, and so that is another visceral reaction because they thought they were supposed to get somewhere else.
It was the creek. They came back to the same.
They
creek
came back
with
to the same
like
creek.
log across or whatever, and that's when like everyone breaks down and they're crying and like they apologize and they realize that they have to like rally together.
To Heather and was it Heather and Mike or Heather and the other guy get into this basically shoving match, and she bites him.
Heather and Mike.
Yeah,
Mike is the one who threw it.
Yeah, and he's like pushing her.
He wants the video off. At this point, they're getting fed up with the video
because they're still videoing. She's still like recording everything, and at this point, like that was one of the things that I thought was like, why would you be recording at this point? I would just turn it off.
Well, I think I'm gonna quell this right now. I think as a safety mechanism and a way to distance yourself from that.
They make it believable. They make it believable. I don't question it.
I do think that a lot of people, because this has come up a lot with people that I talk about with this movie, like, why would you keep on filming? Wouldn't you like try to figure a way to like take it apart and make a fire out of it? No, because they still have hope and they're very naive and they don't know the shit that they're in. They have no clue how fucked they are.
And enough has happened paranormal wise, and enough weird stuff's happened. Heather mentions it multiple times. Like, I got to keep documenting this. Which she's a filmmaker at heart. They established that early on, that she is all about this project more than she's about them. So she's going to live and die by this project.
It is an anchor to sanity. It is like one of the few things that's actually keeping them tethered to the real world. that would you not do that? Of course you would. You need to have something that keeps you grounded, because otherwise...
The one thing I will say, though, how did those cameras still have battery life?
They talk a lot about get this out, get the data out, get this out. Like, I think that they had enough battery. Like,
but they were gone for
battery. Well, you swap those batteries out on those, though. You would have lots of batteries.
I see. That was out of all of it.
We're led to believe as an audience that this is an hour, essentially like an hour and 15 minutes of footage. Those cameras have enough battery life, and even if they brought backups to be able to do, and again, from not what actually was there. If this was 8 hours of footage, they'd have like 2 or 3 hours maybe. If they brought backups. I do think that they would have enough battery backup, but like if you're talking about them bringing those cameras out there with no backups, no, they would be gonna they'd be done.
They set them up as so unprepared as hikers, campers, and documentary people.
I think I would push back and say I agree with you. I think they were very unprepared hikers, backpackers. I don't think she was an unprepared filmmaker, because she is trying to. I thought you used this camera before, Josh. Didn't you use this camera before? Yeah. Okay, we'll need to get this done. Don't forget to get the data. Like, I think she, frighteningly, is so much more concerned about like the film, even when it's becoming more than like a tethered to reality, and it's like, I have to do this right now. I have to watch it. That like, that's watching that back now that's kind of scary, because I feel like people would do that nowadays with their phones and shit, and out in the wilderness on TikTok, like.
For sure.
Like, I have to get this. I have to get this. No, but you're walking too close to that ledge. I have to get it. I plummet to your death.
Well, I mean, didn't Logan Paul have that same issue? Jesus. Should we go there? I mean, to your point, though, I can see that, and that's a good point to make about her and her preparedness for this film.
But nothing else, though, and that's why I think it's important that we're talking about this part, because like. I don't know if they meant to put that in there. I don't know if that was a byproduct, but like, fuck, that's really scary that like she didn't really acknowledge what she was dealing with and was more prepared to make a movie than she was to survive. But the one thing that does survive is the film, and the fact that they're prepared for that, or at least she was. That's the part that like, that's just a posthumous, like, I don't know.
So
it's just scary.
At that point, they're running around.
They are truly lost and just wandering and hoping. I think they decide to go east.
I think it's in the morning that they wake up, and they all like. Josh says he's going to go to the bathroom or something.
No, Josh is just not there.
He's just not
there. They wake
there.
up. They wake up the next morning, and he is not in the tent.
Yeah, that's what it is.
And Heather's like, "Where's Josh? Mike, where's Josh?" He's like, "I don't know. Probably went to go like piss or whatever." They get up. They start to break down their camp, and Josh is in his sight. They start calling for him, and he's nowhere to be found. Mike's trying to be positive. He's like, he's probably off doing something, taking a dump or whatever. We're gonna find him.
It's always taking a dump. That's always the first excuse. Hey, where's Kyle? He's taking a dump.
Massive shit.
Dookie. But yeah, they break it down, and guess who doesn't show is Josh. And at that point, they both realize that something happened, and their time is dwindling.
You can tell they're malnourished. They're getting dehydrated. They don't have shit to eat. They say it so many times, like, I'm hungry, I'm cold, I want to go home. And that like that will to survive without the skill set to do so has got to be so sobering feeling. And just like, fuck, like, we don't know what we're doing. We got to hope for a miracle.
At this point, not even starting fires at night, because they don't want to track whatever's following them. And they make mention of that, even though it doesn't do any good, because they can still hear the children laughing. They can still hear the other things happening.
And then this night, when Mike and Heather camp together, no Josh, what do they hear in the middle of the night but someone screaming for help?
Josh
it sounds like Josh.
Yeah,
they can't.
Yeah, that's a
make
good point.
It out that it's Josh.
That's a good point. It sounds like Josh.
It's definitely a man screaming. It has a very bassy voice, and it does sound very similar. And don't they just go running for him, or like
I believe so.
Trying to go find him?
They don't the first night. They walk out of the tent and they scream, and they don't really hear any callbacks.
Josh, how was your dump?
Was it runny or solid?
How big was it?
Are you done yet?
Where'd you get your toilet paper?
Use a pine cone, buddy.
It scoops better.
But yeah, they don't get any response. They just hear someone screaming, and they eventually, I guess, I don't know if they fall. I don't think they fall asleep, and but they're back in their tent.
Is that the night that she has her little soliloquy?
That's the next night, because when they wake up, or when Heather wakes up, she finds a bundle of sticks in front of their tent. And what you want to describe how that was created and what was in that?
I don't know how it was created, but it was like essentially a bundle of sticks that was tied together by a piece of flannel. And who was wearing flannel? Josh. She opens it up begrudgingly and very hesitantly, kind of opens it up and starts peeling back these sticks that are loosely placed. And then in the center, you can't see it until it's all unfolded. There's just another piece of flannel cloth that's just soaked. And she said it's covered in blood. And at that point, you're like, this is not going to be good. So she opens it up, and she gasps, pulls her hands back, and then she starts hyperventilating. Because there is some human remains, I'll just say.
There's hair, teeth, tongue,
and
thumb.
Lips, it looked like. Something. There was a lot of different symbolic body parts that were placed in that thicket.
Yeah, it was hear no evil, see no evil.
Speak no evil.
Speak no evil. So
yeah, his ear.
That's what I picked up on, because it had his ears, his tongue, and his teeth.
But there was a clump of his hair in there too, and he had long hair, so it's like someone just like ripped it out and threw it in that bundle.
Yeah, it's because they had the leftovers.
We got to throw something else in here. It's just it doesn't look right.
Someone grabbed his ponytail. I was taking a dump, just yanked it out.
That's why you don't have long hair, fellas.
Yeah. That happens, and she doesn't tell Mike.
No. Why would no? Because Mike has lost it. Mike he threw the map away. And he's also now at the point where she's trying to talk to him. He's like, I found cigarettes. We're all good now. And he's rocking back and forth. He is completely lost it.
State.
Yeah, poor guy. They were American spirits too. They weren't gonna help him at all.
That's just nothing for you.
But then this is when they have the question of who is more wicked, the Wicked Witch, the West or the East? And they are like the East. So they just start going east. And do they find their car? Do they?
No.
And
it gets dark out, and they find.
They camp.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. They camp, and then they get.
And then
they hear.
And then this is where we get the famous
soliloquy
scene. Yeah.
Yes.
They hear screams, more screams, and this time it feels like it sounds like it's a lot closer.
Yeah.
It
feels like it's like
audible.
It feels like he's like right next.
He's
to
saying
them.
help. He says help me multiple times. It's the camera
she's saying
her.
She's like, I just want to say I'm sorry to Josh's mom, to Mike's mom, to my mom. We didn't know what we were doing.
She's basically saying her goodbyes, and this scene has been parodied across the board.
It has been referenced and overdone.
If you've never seen the Blair Witch Project, you've never talked about the Blair Witch Project, you've never had someone talk to you about the Blair Witch Project, you still know this scene.
I mean, it's the movie poster cover.
It's
her
the
face
poster.
with
It's
the beanie on and the light in her face.
In the shot itself, if you haven't seen it, which you've at least seen a photo of, I guarantee it, or seen it done in another movie, is just the corner of her right eye. It's completely dark around her. You can't see shit around her, and it's like camera light. So she's kind of grayscaled out, and she is just losing it. She is crying. She is sniffling. You see snot running out of her nose. And she is basically apologizing, begging for forgiveness, needing help. Like, she's at her wit's end at this point.
Because she knows the end is near.
Yeah, and this is symbolic of she's finally given away her art. She wants to give that, move on, and be saved. And then that's when they hear more screaming at this point.
And then they run because they start running towards that sound and where that sound's coming from. And then they stumble upon this old-ass abandoned house, which was, I guess, supposed to be the Rustin Parr's
house.
That's
exactly what it was supposed
to be. A nice house at one point.
At one point, but it's dilapidated. It's creepy. Broken door. You have a giant tree, a log that's grown from
it looks dangerous in the way of, not even if you stumbled on this house in the middle of nowhere and just went through it and it wasn't paranormal in any way, shape, or form, you're falling through the floor and like
you're gonna kill yourself.
Yeah,
you're gonna get tetanus for sure.
Yeah, a tetanus, or you're dying in that house. So they start running into that house, and my tension's like through the roof because I'm like, please don't fall through the floorboard. Like, that's all I think about.
Those stairs aren't sturdy, goddammit.
No.
There's asbestos on the wall and lead paint.
You're going to roll your ankle.
But what was on the walls? Because they run upstairs.
Yeah,
first.
so this is definitely Rustin Parr's house because on the wall there are children's handprints.
Bloodied handprints. There's also satanic symbols on those walls too.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
I'll have to
Yeah,
go back and look at that.
There's definitely
There's a
some
lot
stuff.
on those walls, and she's begging Mike, don't go upstairs, but they keep hearing the screams coming from upstairs. So at one point, they're kind of reluctant to go upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of got caught in the house, and they're like, we shouldn't be in this house.
Yeah.
And then, but they're like, well, we're fucking here. We might as well go try to save our friend.
Maybe if we can get one more person on our side, maybe we can figure this out. There's two people against whatever.
So they're upstairs, and then they hear something coming from like the basement. So Mike just beelines out of it. He's like, Josh, I'm coming for you. He runs down the stairs, down another flight. He's in the basement, and Heather's right behind him, and she's screaming at him like, Mike, be careful, Mike.
And he keeps on going around corners and not listening, and she's trying to stick together with him.
And he goes into the basement, and she's like, Mike. She doesn't hear anything from Mike. Mike. She walks down, and it's, again, a dilapidated basement, like dirt floors. There's no foundation. She looks over in the corner, and she sees Mike standing in that corner facing the walls. And she yells out to him, Mike! And then all of a sudden, something hits her, and she falls down to the ground, and you see the still frame of that camera looking in that corner, and it cuts to black.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And that's the Blair Witch Project.
That is.
And at Asterix, that used to there used to be not any credits there.
Yeah.
It used to just roll to black, and it would be like, I don't know, 5 minutes, 6 minutes of just black.
Before we get on to the next, that scene had never been changed. But when Hammocks Entertainment or whatever, the production? Haxon, when they sold it to Artisan Entertainment, they wanted to change the ending because it left audiences a little confused. And they went back and they did like 4 alternative endings. One of them got super gory. I don't know what the other ones were. But they stuck with that same ending. They simply added some exposition with the townsfolk. That Rustin Parr story was never in there. So they added that in so that made sense why Mike was standing in the corner. And it kind of tied it all together. And they didn't really change much.
That does make a little bit more sense because...
Why would he be standing in a corner?
Yeah,
Why would it just,
And I think that scene and that finale would have fallen even more flat. Because I remember when I first saw that final scene, which is also a legendary scene in itself. I was like, it was like a wet fart in church to me. Like I didn't the first go around, and the second go around I know it's coming. So like the ending, I'm still kind of, the house is very creepy. But like the final scene, I'm not a big fan of, and I don't know if it's just because I missed the boat on it, because the first one just set the tone for me.
I remember when I first saw it when I was the 10-year-old, I saw him in the corner, and I was like, it's just like the guy said. It's just like the guy said. She's about to get tortured, and then sure enough.
I think there's a lot of found footage films that kind of do it better than the Blair Witch Project in a way, but you have to kind of take what it did at the time and what it influenced.
I will say, how many people can name those other found footage films?
Yeah, exactly.
Cannibal
cuts.
Holocaust is a very legendary film, because I mean even Blair Witch has mentioned Cannibal Holocaust as I think the directors and producers were inspired by that.
I do think that Cannibal Holocaust is a pretty cheap movie though, because of just like they made everything real, and like there was real shit in that movie that should never have been on film, and that's not art. That's not what art is.
Yeah,
I know that we call it a found footage. I don't consider it to be found footage just because that's real life.
So as much as the Blair Witch changed the game and then spawned all of these found footage horror films, you also got to remember what came before it. I think it's time. Let's start with you, Andrew. Let's answer the question. Now that we've bored our audience to sleep, do you think this movie holds up?
100%, without a doubt.
Okay.
I don't want to go on a limb here, but this is one of my all-time favorite horror movies. I would probably put it in my top 5 of all time.
Interesting.
I would have it up there.
It's a high praise.
Yeah, it hits.
He's seen 6 horror films, man.
7, actually. It hits home. It takes you there. I don't necessarily quantify art on how it makes you feel, but I kind of do. And this one makes you feel a certain something.
Well, that's what art is. Art is just
Yeah.
about the connection and emotions.
But if something can make you feel something so strongly, it's done a good job. And this one always stresses me out. I wouldn't say it lights the fear of God in me, but like it makes me feel some sort of emptiness or aloneness that it's hard to really put into words and hard to explain, and it does it so masterfully. And I love the simplicity. I wouldn't say the simplicity, but the minimalistic nature of this and just how real it seems. I think paranormal entities are what really get me as a horror enthusiast. That's the only thing that really scares me. Something beyond the unknown. And you couple that with being in the outdoors. And like I said earlier, if you have been in a camping situation, an outdoor wilderness situation that's gone wrong or is just uncomfortable or unsettling any way, you can relate to this movie 100%. There are aspects of it that I despise that aren't necessarily related to the movie, but what happened outside that we'll touch upon here in a bit, because I think we need to do the actors some justice. But it holds up.
Hey, go ahead.
If you want me to go. Okay, so
yeah, go ahead and hit it.
these actors didn't make much at all, like if anything, from this movie.
How much did they make for the movie itself?
Initially, it was like $500 per week or something like that.
I read one report that they made $1,000 a day over 8 days.
I don't think that's
$8,000 a
accurate.
piece.
Yeah,
I don't think that's accurate at all.
but that's not a lot of money either.
Not at all.
Not
at all.
It's not.
For a budget of, you said it was a $700,000 budget, and they made $8,000.
Well,
each
it was
to be
After the fact.
to
It was
be lost.
But
in
this
the
is what I
woods.
was trying to make a distinction about before: is what was that production cost before they shot it, when they shot it, and after? Because afterwards, that stuff.
Yes,
that was
that's
never
what-
in play.
it was
what
never.
was in play was probably that $60,000 to $100,000 at first, and then you divvy that up with like cost of camera rental, cost of paying people to do pre-production work like scouting, getting things together for the actual film, resources, logistics, paying people on the day, actors and crew alike. Like that's what I was thinking of. It sounds like 8,000 might be around, like if they gave them like how many days did they shoot this over? Like
I don't know the number of days.
It was like a week.
They had 80 hours worth of footage. So do the math there.
do the math,
I mean, it's not.
bro.
It's not that.
No,
long.
that's 4 days. It's about 4 days of footage, a little less than 4 days of actual, like, start to finish day.
Yeah.
80 hours footage over 2 or 3 cameras.
But
That's 10 hours a day.
I feel
It's a lot.
pretty confident they didn't make the 1,000. I think it was much more bare bones, because if my memory serves me correct, and I read the Variety article that interviewed them today, it was like 500 and then like food. It was nothing. It was absolutely nothing. And
I can believe it.
No, I believe it was nothing. It's just it's just more so like. Well, I guess you're going to touch on that.
yes, there's much more to divulge here. They were non-union actors, and that's a big deal. It's obviously an independent movie.
Once
To be
Tom
union.
Hanks turned it down, they had to resort to this.
But they signed a non-union contract that guaranteed them 1% of the net profits if the film made over $1 million. And once it screened at Sundance, it was a big hit. People liked it immediately. And this company, Artisan Entertainment, came and bought the company that the two filmmakers who created it, what was it again? Hammocks? I keep saying it wrong.
Haxon.
Haxon, God damn it. Haxon, they bought it for $1.1 million. So just over that $1 million threshold. But because Artisan Entertainment took over it, they weren't looking at these non-union contracts. They don't give a shit about that. Hollywood doesn't care about non-union contracts. It gets lost in their accounting folders and whatnot. So they didn't see anything. They made nothing off the bat.
Did they make a percent of the 1.1?
No, they had to sue for that.
Damn.
So
just off the 1.1, not even what came later.
correct.
So it's anything over $1 million. So they're suing for $100,000 basically.
Correct.
To split between 3 people.
Correct. And when that movie came out, it was a big hit. It was pretty popular, and they were making making their rounds on the nightly talk shows, and their billboards would be up in Times Square. And I remember reading in this article, I think it was Mike's agent was like, yo, man, I saw you in Times Square. That's great. And he was like, yeah, I'm not making any money off it. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, I'm working at the furniture store in Westchester. I didn't make any money off this. And it was because of the contract they signed. So they sued Artisan, who was then bought by Lionsgate, and they reached a settlement. They altogether were given $300,000, like $100,000 each, over the course of years. Mind you, Lionsgate has already made $250 million off this, and they absorbed Artisan, who was probably paying royalties to Haxan, and they probably made like $50 million or something like that, $45 or $50 million, because it was their creation. But these actors who filmed the entire thing, who created the scenes, created the dialogue based off of small prompts and skeleton prompts, they created the essence of this movie, but saw they didn't reap the benefits of the profits whatsoever. And I don't know, as an actor, as someone who knows that you can't get an agent without work, but you can't get work without an agent, it's all so fucked for those who create the art. And it really brings things down a couple points for me, because their name, image, and likeness was used for years. Their real names are Heather Freeman, Mike Williams, and Joshua, whatever it is.
And how do you get a job if that's...
They couldn't.
Exactly my point.
When they went to calls and auditions after the fact of the movie, they were like, I only see you as Heather from Blair Witch. Is this actually your real name? And she was like, yeah, we had to use my real name to make it seem like I actually disappeared. And then at that point, they were chastised for using their real names at auditions.
Which in IMDb, too, it even said that they were dead. So, because I know Heather's mom received a bunch of sympathy cards when the movie launched.
So how do you go out and live your life when you are tied to this movie, but it gives you nothing? It gives you absolutely nothing. The guy who played Josh went on to have a semi-successful career as a working actor, did some things. Mike is now a guidance counselor somewhere in like New York and lives in a 1-bedroom apartment with his family. I don't know what Heather's doing, but I think she's been on some shows. She has? She quit. She got out.
I saw her on a show recently. I don't remember. No, I don't know what it was, but it was something.
She got out of the acting game, and I think she really struggled with some substance abuse and depression. And can you blame her? I mean,
not at all. Pay your actors.
Seriously.
Pay your artist. They will make you money. Pay them.
That's the only black cloud that I have on this movie, honestly.
That's a pretty big one, too.
It is huge. It's absolutely huge. That's my spiel, Kyle. What do you think?
The industry is the industry. You're not going to... there's no...
But... does it hold up?
Yeah. No, there's not a world in which this doesn't hold up for me. This is... But we're talking about the context of where we live in now.
Yeah.
I say yes because we know the time period that this takes place in and how real that was and how, tethered information was to, archaic resources, what we would say archaic now. You get a book and you go to a library and you check it out to get information. You don't have the internet at your fingertips.
Sometimes you get, shaken down by security if you didn't have the library card,
too.
too.
For sure, especially if the DVDs were involved.
Yeah.
Don't even get me started with the DVDs, baby. That was the other blockbuster. It does hold up for me just in the sense that I think a lot of our people who are listening, our listeners, I do believe y'all know as well that the time that this existed in was a very different time than it is now. And if you know that time and you can remember back and put yourself back in that time frame, you're going to be transported, and it's going to be alarming and pretty scary. And thank God for technology we have now.
Yeah,
because this doesn't really happen until, like Chase was saying before, this doesn't happen now. This kind of thing that we're talking about, people get lost in the woods, yes, but this story and how scary it actually is, it does not happen today.
I'll be honest with both of you. I was planning on saying it didn't hold up for that very reason. But it's hard to watch it and not appreciate what it created. It created something further than the internet. It created viral marketing. Think about how Cloverfield did the same thing that Blair Witch Project did with its viral marketing. with its slush show campaign. It's like when you sit down and you think about it, it's like, do I think it's like a stellar classic movie? Not really. There's a lot of tension. I think I enjoyed it more on my second viewing now than I did in my first. I am a horror guy. I've seen a lot of great horror films, and where does this stack up? I think I look at this film as, yes, it holds up because of what it created and the legacy that this film implemented on everything. And it still does the found footage film, like found footage shots way better than a lot of the other found footage films that come out, which I'm not a big fan because most found footage films are kind of ass.
They are.
Yeah, I mean, even like Paranormal Activity is good, but I mean,
it's still cheap in some
yeah,
ways.
it's still kind of like hokey. And it's hard to do paranormal straight faced because a lot of people are automatically coming in with that. Well, this isn't real. This is stupid.
They haven't suspended their willing suspension.
Yeah, and it's hard to get people to do that. And I feel like this film did it really well just by suspending it into a documentary, a mockumentary. When it gets really paranormally and the ending, I'm still like, on. But there was enough creepiness and getting lost in the woods is scary enough.
It's fucking horrifying.
So, and especially now, at the time when I watched it, I wasn't camping a whole lot. Now that I've camped and been in the wilderness, that made the middle meat of the movie a little bit more savory for me.
What would make the ending better for you?
I don't know. I find it, what I was going to say is a lot of those movies like that found footage, like Wreck. Have you guys seen Wreck?
No.
So Wreck, which some listeners may know, is a Spanish found footage film that I think has done it the best, maybe the best of all time. You may know it because they remade it in the U.S. called Quarantine.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, Quarantine.
Quarantine's great.
Yeah. So Wreck is way better, and Wreck is the original version. Yeah. But even the ending there is kind of like,
meh.
Yeah, it's hard to pull those paranormal endings off.
Very hard. I think that's one of the reasons why people think that it's a cheap movie that it doesn't do that. But I think that's because we've all been conditioned to see the monster. You have to see it in order to be afraid of it.
And I love that we didn't.
That's exactly one of the reasons why I peg this higher than most other horror movies, is because that's not real life, folks. And we don't have any explanation for the paranormal because we can't prove it.
I'm not like bashing it by any means. I definitely say it holds up. I think there's a legacy to this film. And if you haven't seen it, I think you need to see it. Even there's going to be some people that watch it and are like hate it because they won't be able to see it in that time period, which is fine. But I think it's worth watching for everybody. If you're over the age of 27, 28, I think you'll definitely be able to kind of relate to that time period. But it's definitely worth watching, and it's like one of those checkmark movies. There's a lot of movies that don't hold up, but there's still movies that have transcended film itself and created like stuff that you like after that, and you need to see those movies to understand where these things come from. I was talking to Kyle. I recently watched The Good and the Bad and the Ugly for the first time. Can't believe I missed that. I can't believe that was one that like surpassed me. But when I was watching that movie, I could see so many films after it. And I loved the movie, but even if I didn't like the movie, there's a lot of respect for that. And that's where I was with this movie, is like I saw so many films that tried to imitate, do, and could not do. And whether this is a great movie or not, that's something you stand up and applaud. Yeah. So for me, yes, it holds up. And it was better when it existed in its time. Yeah. And now that it's outside of its time, it's not as good, but it's still a legacy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But let's
do some IMDb ratings.
Yeah, let's do that. Andrew, do you know the IMDb?
I do, but I already have my number. I had my number ahead of it, so I'll go last. I want you,
okay.
Chase, you go, Kyle, go, and then I'll finish it up.
Because of its like, I don't want to say novelty because I feel like that like ruins kind of the gravity of it. The fact that they did so much with so little, and it felt real because they improv the dialogue. That all like coming together with the editing as well. Somebody to go through 80 hours over 5 days.
They probably had a team to do that.
I'm sure they did, but it doesn't. That's still like, I mean, to be able to come up with a cohesive vision creatively.
As someone who's edited a lot, that is painstaking. I'm thinking about editing this podcast right now and really want to slam my head into a brick wall.
But like that's I think that just knowing how much care and attention went into this, and honestly, kind of what Andrew was talking about like the bullshit that happened afterwards, I feel obligated to give this a higher rating because the actors went through so much and they're still alive. And, like I feel like a lot of people would quit life at that point because that would be overwhelming. So I would give this movie an 8.2. Very, 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 very high. But again, because of what we're talking about, and like you said, Chase, the legacy that this spawns and how good the first one was and how irreplaceable and unreplicatable it is, I think that's one of the reasons why it's going to get one of the highest scores I will ever give, which is 8.2.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I would have said as a movie alone, I was going to say in the 6 range, like the early 6s, but I'll do a 7.5.
Wow.
Because again, I was in the frame of what this spawned. As again, if you go watch this movie, you have to watch it with that lens to get the full greatness that's on display here. You can't just go in going, oh, I'm going to watch, I've never seen this movie before, I'm going to watch a horror movie tonight. Because I guarantee you're going to watch it, you're going to look at all 3 of us, and you're going to go, these guys are idiots. Yeah. They're stupid. This movie sucks. But if you go in with that lens and you suspend your disbelief just enough and believe what people in the late 90s believed that this was real, you're going to have a good time. You're going to freak yourself out a little bit. Mm-hmm. Even if, I'm disconnected on the ending, but the woods and the beginning, I was believing all that and fully entranced in that movie. So 7.5, and that may be one of my higher scores that I've given.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that, if I'm being honest.
I'm surprised you gave it that as well.
Because I thought about docking it because of how they treated the actors, but Kyle makes a great point. I shouldn't dock their work. They deserve that bump. They deserve to keep that.
Well, maybe I think we have 1.8 million listeners. Maybe if we get all those people to start watching the Blair Witch, and we can start a campaign
to get them paid.
Yeah, I mean, throw us a couple bucks right here on this podcast, and we'll make sure it gets to Heather, Mike, and what was the last guy?
Josh.
We'll just make sure it gets to Heather and Mike.
But
seriously,
but for real,
like that.
This is one of the reasons why I feel like having a podcast like this would be valuable, is to call out the bullshit in the industry. And one of the reasons why I know a lot of people that don't do it anymore is because of the bullshit of the industry.
With that being said, I'm going to give it a 7.8.
Wow. That's
so
very high.
I was going to say 7.8 and drop it to a 7.5, but I don't want to drop it because Heather, Josh, and Mike don't deserve that. No. And I don't want to put it into the 8s because it's, like I said, it's not something extravagant. It's not super, super deep. There's a lot of it is superficial, but just the way that it makes you feel, it makes me feel.
And it's the perfect movie to watch for Halloween.
It is. It really is.
And we're celebrating Halloween. Yeah, we're celebrating Halloween right now. It's Halloween.
Yeah.
You go out and watch this movie. Go out and
watch it outside.
Get lost in the woods. Yeah,
like outside or something. Like, do it. Get lost in the woods.
Get lost in the woods. Kill some children.
Kill some children. Don't bring food with you, and get very anal retentive over the dat.
And don't forget the SIGs.
Don't forget the SIGs.
American spirits.
But yeah, sorry, 7.8. It holds up.
Those are some of the highest scores we've given any movie.
So,
and I honestly went into this not sure how I would feel.
Yep.
Obviously, there is a strong remembrance, a strong nostalgic feeling with this, but it still hits home. And I watched it by myself Friday night in a dark apartment, and I still came away impressed.
my question now is, what does IMDb actually say?
I think they're fucking wrong as hell. 6.5.
Ooh.
I think it's so low. I saw that. I was
bullshit.
like, of all the nostalgia bumps you've given to other movies, fuck you.
I do have something to say to this. So I know we're on our kick we're finishing up our Halloween season, so we've watched horror films. Horror films generally get the lower ratings. They are kind of blackballed in the industry.
Yep.
It's a shame because there's so many great horror films out there with wonderful everything. Because a lot of people watch these movies, they go in with I'm sure it's not scary, and then they don't suspend their disbelief. They go, "That wasn't scary at all."
They set themselves up for
And
failure.
they set and horror.
Stupid
So
little
horror
fucking
is the
minds.
hardest thing to film, shoot, write, and execute because there's just a lot of bad horror out there.
There really is.
And there's and people go in to watch a horror movie instead of finding, because horror, and I told someone this today, horror is the realest form of Hollywood, I believe, because it is telling the stories of the most underutilized, downtrodden people in the most metaphorical way. And people think horror is lowbrow, and they think it is as
Gory,
as base
cheap.
it's as base as what it is. And so they're like, I just want to be scared. And they're not scared, but they're missing the overtones. They're missing the art of horror. Horror is telling those stories from the common man that has to go through it. I mean, think about race and, homophobic, like stuff like that. Even like homelessness is all dictated into horror, and these stories from these people, that's where it comes from. And people miss that, and then they shit on these horror films because they don't know what they're watching.
If you're not going to buy into it and you just want to be scared because a face pops out at
Then
you,
fuck right up.
Since it is Halloween, I do want to ask one question, and we'll make this quick because I know we're running out of time and patience here. It could be a movie, it could be a game, it could be a TV show, it could be music. Andrew, when you were a child, what scared you the most?
Headless Horseman.
Headless Horseman, gotcha.
Yeah, Ichabod Crane, Headless Horseman.
Gotcha.
Nothing to Sleepy Hollow. Fucking
Okay.
loved that, but it scared me.
Kyle?
the Amityville horror was like, that was it. Like that,
Gotcha.
the idea of a demon that would kill you and you can't do anything to it. That scared the shit out of me.
If I increased my age, so like say like 10 or 11, it would be different. But
I think
young,
I think that's a good
kid,
one. Yeah, no,
Sleepy
that makes
Hollow.
sense.
as a teenager, Alien scared me the most.
So mine is, as a kid, I was scarred by Resident Evil 2, watching my brother play.
That's scary.
That
That's
scared the
scary.
shit out of me.
Scary game.
And that's what I'll always think about when we roll through October. But thank you for rolling through October with us as we rolled through your mind, pulled the Blair Witch Project out of your little nightmares, found out it holds up. You should go back and watch it. Watch it tonight. Watch it in the woods. Get lost. Kill some children. Whatever it may take from you, please don't kill some children. That's a felony,
Among other things.
among other things. Please go watch it. Have a safe, lovely Halloween, and we'll see you this Thanksgiving. Have a great rest of your day.